Hey, HTDA, and today I have an update for you on Cosmoteer because we got a whole new set of weapons in the game and I'm really excited to try to test them out because fire has been the bane of my existence in this game and now we get to fire at our enemies. There's a lot of fire in the game, let's put it like that. Which means it's time to say goodbye to my good old faithful railgun spinner and see if we can make something equally powerful with the use of these new fire weapons. Now, just to be clear, this is not just a matter of new weapons being added to the game that you slap on your ship and you're good to go. No, there's an entire new system around this as well. So, we have heat piping, radiators, thermal batteries, all kinds of things that have to do with managing heat throughout your entire ship, which is an entire new system on itself. Even if you're not using the heat weapons, you're still going to have to deal with this. You can use these to boost your stuff. Anyway, you'll see in a moment. Let me see if I can come up with a small modest design to start with. The main way to use the heat as a weapon is by use of the thermal resonance lens. Now this is a turret that you can put on top of your ship, which is always really nice, and that is going to shoot the actual heat at your enemies. Now, as you can see by the kind of a red area around this is actually going to generate a lot of heat. Makes sense. So we're going to need to build a system around these things in order to make sure that our own ship doesn't catch on fire. Directing the heat away from your systems can be done by use of these heat pipes, and you can see the connections with these yellow lines. So you can connect these up like this, for example, and there we go. Now we have a connected system. Now, of course, this is not going to do anything by itself. This is just going to pump the heat around my ship. So we're going to need some radiators to get rid of the heat somehow. Now you can see the line moving out from there. This is where the heat is actually going to escape. I don't know, let's put it at the side for now, just keep things a little bit simple and start with something like this. Another way of handling the heat is with the thermal battery. This battery is going to absorb some of the heat, store it, so at least you have kind of a buffer to work with if your radiators can't get rid of it fast enough. This is going to store it, might as well connect it up something like this. And then last but not least, we have the heat exchanger, which is going to absorb heat from the hull. So this is also a defense against actually getting heat on your ship. This is going to make sure we can absorb the heat that this thing is going to be throwing out. So if we connect that up something like this, maybe add in a little bit extra just to make it safe, then that should take care of business like that. Okay, so let's start out with a very simple design like this. I have two of those nice little thermal resonance lenses over here, along with some basic shielding armor, engines, and so forth. Nothing special here. This is not going to be the biggest beast out there, but it's going to hopefully win us some fights. Let's try it out. Just to start things off, I spawned a tiny little ship into the game just to test out how these weapons work. Now, remember, these are turrets, so what we can actually do is put the shields on the back of the ship and run away from our enemy while we're firing at them. And I'm honestly not entirely sure which way this weapon is facing. I might have to flip around to begin with to fire. But you know, we're about to find out. We should be in range fairly soon. I think the engines will shut off at that point, and we're probably going to see the ship turning around to try and keep its distance. Now, once this enemy gets in range, we're going to start shooting at it. There we go. Look at those beams of fire. And yeah, if we go to the other ship, we can actually see, let's pause for a moment, what is happening here. So we are basically just overloading the ship, and you can see fires all over the ship now starting to happen. Of course, fire is a bad thing for your ship. The ship blows apart really, really quickly. So even though these weapons by themselves are not particularly strong, and yeah, I do think I flipped them the wrong way around, the weapons do cause a massive amount of damage to the enemy ships if they are not ready for them. Other than just firing heat at your enemies, you can use heat for a different purpose as well. You can actually generate it on purpose. So for example, if you go to your engine room, you now have this overclock ability that you can turn on, and this is going to increase the performance, but you're going to be generating heat. So of course, then you really want to make sure your heat exchangers are up and running and you have your radiators good to go, because you're pretty much going to cause fires on your ship if you don't. This is a very fun mechanic you can play around with, and pretty much every system on the game has this now, so you can even overclock your shields, for example, which is awesome. You can go through all of them. The engines have that mechanic. I think pretty much everything that's generates something or shoots at something or whatever has this. So even your reactor cores, for example, you can overclock and thereby make sure you have enough power to go around. I don't know, can you actually overclock your control room? No, you can't, but you can, of course, overclock your thrusters, etc., etc. So a very interesting thing, a kind of like high risk, high reward type of thing to play around with. And you definitely want to make sure that you have some redundancy in your heat piping, because of course, if any parts of your ship gets damaged and that gets interrupted, you could be in major trouble, not just because the enemy might be shooting heat weapons at you, but you might be causing heat within your own systems as well. Okay, so let's see how the ship holds up when we face it off against a ship of more of its equal size. Now you can see there's some lasers firing at my ship already. I am overclocking my shields, so my shields are doing a pretty good job at keeping them at bay. And that's where the overclocking comes in. I am not really getting through the enemy shields by the looks of it though, so that is a thing. Am I causing any fires on the ship though? There seem to be no issues on the ship whatsoever, and my ship just got taken out. So you definitely need, I think, some supporting fire to go along with your heat. Kind of punch through the shields at first and then have the heat cause major damage on the enemy ships themselves. One way of increasing the damage that you do to those shields and thereby also to the enemy ship is using some amplification pumps. Now these things are going to increase the heat intensity for all the guns connected to the network. So you don't necessarily need to place them next to your guns. They can be anywhere in your ship as long as they are connected to the same heat network. And yeah, it kind of works the same as the stacking of railguns and things like that. So this is how you get that additional punch that you need. Now similarly, but at the same time also quite differently, there's another pump, the dilation pump, that is not going to increase the damage that you do in the single beam, but it is going to spread that damage across a larger area. So this is increasing the area of effect, as it's named, and this makes attacking larger ships a lot more viable, because as soon as you do damage to a certain part of that ship, you get through those shields, you can pretty much just set the entire ship on fire. At least that's the idea behind these dilation pumps. It's also worth noting that overclocking systems doesn't necessarily just make it do this exact same thing but better, but it actually changes its behavior as well in some cases. So for example, over here you can see the large shield generator, which is currently overclocked, have a smaller radius than the one that is on the exact same position on the other side that has a larger radius. So once you turn it on, it kind of condenses the field and makes it more intense, but also have it cover a smaller part of your ship. On the other side, if you overclock a small shield generator, it actually enlarges the field and makes it stronger. So it kind of turns into a smaller version of a large generator, if that makes any sense. I mean, if you compare this to the underclocked, or not underclocked, but at least not overclocked version, it's kind of similar to how that would look like. Of course, it's going to need more power doing that, it's going to generate heat, etc., but all of that is really interesting to play around with. So beyond the new weapons, the overclocking, and in general the new behavior of those systems, there is a ton of new design possibilities in Cosmoteer now. So if that is something that you're interested in and you kind of got bored by everything that was already in the game, then I highly recommend you dive back in. Link me some ship designs if you make something interesting. Maybe I can showcase a couple of them if I get around to that. I have to say I can't really promise I will get around to it, but yeah, it's definitely a nice little improvement to the entire game and kind of freshen it up once more. This is just a short update to show you what it's capable of, to highlight that it actually exists. I hope you found that useful. If you're still here, you are awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.